Hello, welcome to the St. John's Sunday at 6 Q&A. We are here with, I'm Em, and I'm here with Kirk, one of our ministers at St. John's, and also here with Ella. I would say she's somewhat of a veteran member. So what we're going to be doing tonight is something that we've done in our services for a while now, but this is our second go at it. In an online sort of format. So there's a number that you can text, and then there's also commenting in the YouTube comments, I guess, for this video. And these are going to come through, and Ella and Kirk are going to do their best to answer these questions. They're not necessarily going to be perfect answers, but yeah, they'll give it a crack. I'm just going to fix my light in the background because I thought it would be better, but it's definitely not.
No. It made like this last second change to her lighting. It's like Andy's counting down, our tech guy's counting down to the lighting is like,
it was great.
Like, oh, to switch his light. And like now she's
because I was looking and I was like, look, as a photography teacher, I can comment and say that my ISO is like really bad. And I was like, maybe I'll just turn it on. Anyway, whatever. I stuffed it. I apologize. Anyway, not the first time I've stuffed it so far. So hopefully we can get better from here.
We like to lower expectations at the start of Q&A.
Yeah.
We are not guaranteeing amazing answers, everybody, but we're going to do our best, and that's the main thing.
That's the main thing. So the number is at the bottom of the screen as well, I believe. I mean, I can't see it, but apparently it's there. So tech guy is nodding. It is there. So yeah, if you wanted to text us in at any stage throughout, we're going to be doing like a live stream of the questions, and yeah. So let's get stuck into it. In the talk, Julie, one of our other ministers, mentioned, I guess, the importance and the urgency, particularly at the moment, of sharing our faith in Jesus. So this question says, how do you tell a friend about Jesus? And then it goes on to say, like, how do you start what you're going to say? When do you bring it up? I know this is something that I've found difficult personally, and I've stuffed it up pretty bad a few times. So it'd be nice to get some tips.
Yeah. this is a really awesome question. And I love that this person, has so much, heart and, really wants to tell their friends about Jesus. And this is something that's really, really cool. We have awesome opportunities to tell friends, and God can really use our friendships to share His word. Um, so there's a couple of ways that you can start. There's a couple of different things that people say, conversations that you can have, or conversation starters. One thing that has been really useful for me is it's really cool to ask people what they believe about God or the universe, or how the world was created, and just kind of listen. I think the best way to start a conversation about Jesus is to listen. And that can sound really counterproductive, but it's really a gift to listen to people and to understand where they're at with their understanding of Jesus. And then one of the great things about listening to people is that you can meet them from where they're at. So if they say, "Oh, I don't really know who Jesus is," or "I don't know what's going on," or if they say, "I think I know who Jesus is. I think he was a prophet," or "I think I know who Jesus is. He was a guy in history." You can say, "Yeah, Jesus was a guy in history, and this is what I understand." And then you can go on to tell things that you've learned about Jesus. One really awesome thing that Julie talked about today is that when we turn to Jesus, we have the Holy Spirit inside of us, and He is there to guide us in that. So you can really trust that the Holy Spirit is working in you, and He'll be guiding you to, say the words that you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, cool, Ella. I pretty much agree. I could give an example, like just from recent weeks. I think just not hiding the Christian parts of your life. Oh, that's a silly thing to say. Every part of your life should have Jesus as an influence.
Like the
But
really obvious ones, though.
yeah, the more
That's
obvious
what you mean,
ones,
yeah.
the Christian activities, the habits, the rituals that you might have in your life, to not hide them in conversation, and to allow them to just sort of naturally spill into conversation as any habit or any other activity that you do would spill in. So whether that's a Bible reading habit that you have, or a church meeting that you have, or whatever, just allow that to be part of conversation. There is definitely this sort of thing of like, maybe I'll hide that because it's embarrassing, or it's unpopular or whatever. But allow that to spill in, and then just see what happens there. Like, just to look at someone's face and see how they take that. Are they interested? And again, it's what Ella said, paying attention to how they respond. Because in our culture in Australia, and this might be exception, if you're watching and maybe you're from a subculture, maybe of migrants or something, it might be a bit different. But if you've sort of grown up in Australia, people are used to Christianity sort of being around. Jesus gets mentioned in TV and movies, and there's churches around, and so religion's just this stuff. This religious stuff are everywhere. So people will have assumptions about Jesus built into what they've grown up with.
Mm.
Now, if they're grown up in another country, maybe not, but if they're grown up here, they will. And so it's good just to learn about that before you start dumping your opinion on them. Listen to what they've picked up along the way. Maybe they picked up some really helpful stuff. Maybe they picked up some really unhelpful stuff, or usually it's a mixture of the two. And so, don't be in a rush to, these days we're in such a rush to share our opinion. And I loved what Ella said of like, listen to them, hear what they've got to say, and then maybe you can just fill in some bits and correct one idea, or give it a different take on something that they've shared.
Mm. Do you have any tips for, say, if you like royally stuff it up and you're like, because I've done that before. I think when I was maybe younger, and probably now even, but I know that I was really gung ho. I was like, yeah, I totally want to talk about my faith and that sort of thing, and I really stuffed it. I really damaged relationships a few times, and I think that's really, I know for me, maybe more reluctant, I would guess now. So do you have any tips for how to not stuff it up?
Ella, do you want to go?
I have had many of these experiences, so
I'm so glad it's not just me.
Kirk, have you got any ideas?
It's probably not dissimilar to just the way to treat people generally, really. So, if you do stuff up, if you do behave like a jerk or do something stupid, admit it, apologize for it. I'll give one tip. Hopefully you have a bit of a sense of how not to be a complete jerk and how to be a nice person. If not, ask some more questions.
Oh no, Kirk.
We've lost
You're
Kirk.
turning into a robot. Oh no, now he's just gone.
Am I back?
Ella, it's all on
Yeah,
you.
he's back. Yeah.
All right. We did have a little bit of a hitch with this. That might happen a couple of times. I apologize if it does. I'll try and correct it quickly. One thing I really liked, we picked up a few years ago in a teaching series we did, which you might still be able to track down on peacemaking. But it was really this idea of when you do an apology, don't use the word if or but in the apology. And we so often do this, and particularly when people publicly apologize, it's like, if I did this, if I upset you, if I offended you or whatever. And it's sort of like, I'm sorry, but not sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. Sorry if you've got a problem with me. And I think if you really have stuffed it up and you reflect on it and you go, geez, the way I handled that conversation was bad. Just go in and just say, this is what I did wrong. And don't say but you also contributed whatever. It may have turned into an argument. They may have not been great either, but just own your part of it 100% and have the humility to do that. And if you can do that, hopefully your friend will respect that and take that on board.
Yeah, cool. So part of our life group, stuffed that again. That's okay. Part of our culture and something that we do as a broader church community, but also here at St. John's, is we meet in a big congregation, and then we also meet in smaller groups, often up to around 12 people. So these are often referred to as cell groups, growth groups. They have lots of trendy, sexy names. Ours is life groups. So this person said, I don't like my life group. What do I do?
Okay, so I oversee life groups for the church. That's like part of my job. Ella, can you give us you are a member of a life group and a youth life group leader.
Yeah.
Could you give us your sort of on the ground perspective, and then maybe I can give a zoomed out perspective after that?
Yeah. Awesome. So something I've been learning about recently and kind of discovering is that one of the greatest things about going to church and going to life groups and those sorts of things is our ability to love people. And I've been listening to a pastor who talks a lot about not going to events for our own growth, even though that can be really, really awesome. But a lot of the time that the growth that we get from going to church actually comes from being able to go to church and love the people around us and get to know the people around us. And even if we don't quite like them or we don't get along with them super well, Jesus encourages us to get along with everyone. And he even says, calls us to get along with people who we might consider enemies. And so this person has a really, really awesome opportunity to grow in their ability to love. And they might make a hard decision to depends on why you don't like your life group. And there's obviously reasons why you might not want to be in the life group that you're in. But I just encourage you, if you feel like you're not getting along with the people, or you feel like the conversations that you're having aren't deep enough, I encourage you to bring what you would really like to have in a life group to the life group.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
like that. Really flipping it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have this opportunity to be love, and you have this opportunity to be an example to the people around you in your life group. Yeah.
Hmm. Is there a situation then? So I really like what you said there about sort of thinking about your own opportunity in that rather than, you know, what am I gaining from this?
Mm.
Is there a, you know, maybe Ella, Kirk, I don't know. Is there a situation that you should definitely leave? Like no questions about it. It's not right, or I don't know. Is there a situation that would warrant just flat out, definitely no questions asked, you leave?
Gee, that's a good question. I guess if you were being actually abused, like illegally, you need to get out of there.
Mm.
And make a big noise about it. And I guess if you've done all the things that Ella said over a long period, you know, you've really done a really hard slog with it, and you do feel like actually you can contribute better in another group. You know, because I guess it's like if the group actually the group purpose is going in that direction, and you feel your gifts and what you can contribute to the group is going in a bit of a different direction, that would probably be a good reason to go looking for a new group.
What might that look like? Because that sounds kind of legit, but I'm just trying to picture like.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to give real life examples without like mentioning
selling
people
out.
people who are watching might know them, or or be watching. So, for example, maybe, as you're growing as a Christian, God's really working in your life and teaching you a fair bit about what He wants you to do in your life, and you've got some particular gifts. God makes everyone different, and you're going, I really want a group that's going to help me grow in these gifts, and that I'm going to get to use them. And so maybe that's the sort of gifts that are maybe around evangelism, and you really want to grow in sharing your faith, and you're thinking about maybe working in a pretty sort of extreme mission situation, heading to a cross-cultural situation, something like that. And your group you're in is a bit more local. Do we just want to sort of do a bit of more of an academic study of the Bible, and we're not particularly outward focused, and they don't want to sort of work on that sort of mission side of things, and you talk it through with them, and you spend that time. You don't just go, you guys don't care about mission, you suck, I'm leaving. But you really work that through with them, and the group actually says, we want to stick with this sort of study style. We're working our way through Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. It's going to take us 4 years, and we're at month 3. So at that point you might go, all right, I'll check back with you in 4 years, but I'm going to go and join another group for there. Do you know what I mean? Like,
okay.
That sort of scenario where the purpose of the group is clear, and they know what they're doing, and that's a good purpose, and you're just looking for a different purpose, but you spent that time working with the group on that.
No, that's really good. Sounds like you're saying sort of check yourself, and kind of, I don't know, look inward before you kind of just are like, no, group. Yeah.
You're in the group, right? So you're part of the problem. I mean,
spice. No, but I like it. It's great. That's true.
The life group is the people in the room, right? So if you're one of those people, and you're saying the group is bad, well, you're part of the reason. Now, you're not the only reason, but you're part of it. Simple as that. Like, and that's not. I'm not. It's a very good question to ask. Like, so it's not a criticism of whoever's asked the question, because I've been in groups. I'm the life groups minister. I'm a huge advocate for them. And I've been in bad life groups, many of which I was the leader of, right? So they do exist, and I'm sure we have them at our church at the moment. but they do go in phases. And so some of those bad groups became good ones or became decent ones because we worked at it as a group. They started off bad, or we went through a bad period, but we worked at it together. And so, yeah, you've got to look at yourself first and go, well, what am I bringing to the group or holding back from the group that I could be contributing? And really do your self-reflection first. And then I would be engaging with the leader of the group after you've done some really honest, prayerful reflection, then talking to the leader of the group about your concerns, working that through with the leader in a really respectful, understanding way, understanding that often group leaders just dump stuff on the leader. I don't think people often understand how much work leading a group like that can be. They're nearly always volunteers. We don't pay our life group leaders at our church. And it's a high responsibility, high intensity role. It's the highest responsibility role in our church that's unpaid. And so apart from maybe one of those really high governance ones that you have to get voted in for. So yeah, really just encourage you to work that through slowly and with a lot of humility. And yeah, eventually maybe you need to make a move, but please don't think a move's just going to fix it. Because as I said, if you're part of the problem, you'll just carry that to your next group. So you need to work that through.
Obviously someone's noticed, Kirk, that you have a Western Bulldogs jumper on. I have my local footy, my Bridges, and I also have my Richmond pajama pants on. So are you keen for footy to go back? I'm not just it's literally one of the questions.
Yeah. And Ella nearly signed up for some women's footy at one point too. I remember we were chatting about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty enthusiastic about it. I mean, yeah, like I haven't been missing it heaps in the sense that like I'm not one of those diehards who's like, I can't go on without footy in winter. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like the Bulldogs are playing at literally when church starts next week. Like it's a 6 o'clock kickoff. So might catch the second half next week. But
go to church.
I will be doing church first. But yeah, should be good. Yeah.
Nah, cool. Yeah, so more on what we were talking about before. So there's another question about relationships, but this is in a different kind of way. So we've talked about, I guess, one-on-one kind of like, I guess, friendship or acquaintance relationships and talking to them about Jesus. We've talked about our life groups, just another type of, relationship building thing. So this, I don't know if this segue will work, but we'll see. So this one says, hey guys, any tips or advice for people dating or just thinking about dating maybe? Yeah, so obviously it says, it goes on to say there's not a lot of, because dating's a relatively new thing in the scheme of humanity, I guess. So yeah, and the Bible doesn't really say anything obvious specific about dating. So how do you navigate this?
I sometimes wonder whether dating whether history will view the whole dating movement as a really bad idea. that we just, that like in 200 years when historians look back on this period of history where people did the dating thing for, I don't know how long it'll go for, where they're just like, yeah, that didn't work. That didn't lead to great results. Because, I don't know, statistically, it doesn't seem to be great. Like, since dating has really been a thing, divorce rates are really high. De facto relationships, which if you're not familiar with that term, is where people don't officially get married and have a wedding and so on, but they basically live in a marriage type relationship, move in together, you live together, often have kids together, shared income, shared lives, etc. They separate at record numbers as well. And so it's going, well, we're not really doing this whole committed, loving relationship thing very well anymore, certainly in Western countries anyway, since we've really started dating. So what's going on now? There's all sorts of factors, I'm being a bit silly, but that will be interesting to see if dating does stick around. Here's a thought. we could talk about this for a long time. People might want to add supplemental questions in. There's a few different sorts of love that we can think of when it comes to romantic love. There's the sort of the more sort of got the hots for someone love, like you're physically attracted. It's like, oh, they're really good looking. I'm really into them. When they walk into the room, the sort of infatuation sort of thing where you're just really into that person. So that's sort of one type of love you could think of. Another type is the sort of more the romancy sort of love, the falling in love type thing. A lot of songs are about this. The more ballady type songs are like this. The more dancey sort of songs are more about the physical sort of love. And there's not many songs about a third type we might think of, which is that more sort of commitment type of love. Laying down your life for somebody else, long term. I'm with you through thick and thin, which in our marriage ceremonies is often what people are committing to. I'm going to be with you through sickness and through health and through all the ups and downs of life. So you've got all these different types of love, and in English we just say all of them are love, but other languages do better with it, and they've got different words for these different types of love. And so most of the time throughout history, cultures have usually said that commitment type of love should come first. It should come much earlier in the process than the other two. That actually you start your relationship off with that type of love, and you sort of develop those other sort of loves later. And maybe not that much later, but the foundation is that first type of commitment love. And what our culture does is like you really need to feel the romantic sort of love first. Like you really need to feel in love first, and then the commitment needs to sort of grow out of that. And then we sort of just jump into the physical type of love whenever, I don't know, the moment takes us. I don't know, whenever our parents aren't around or whatever. And so, and we've lost and I think we've lost something in that. And it's not very helpful in developing good relationships. It can be fun and it can create some highs, some emotional highs and some sort of memorable moments or some, exciting moments, I guess. But it doesn't really set you up for long-term, good, loving relationships that have those three types of love are all really good. And in a relationship, you want to have all three of them. But you want to have them all in good measure and all of them working together. And so I'd encourage anyone who's single or maybe you've just started dating, that when you think about dating, to not let any of those, not let the physical or the sort of falling in love stuff run ahead of the commitment. That actually the commitment thinking and the commitment type of love should always be in the front of your head, in the front of your thinking about the relationship. And by that, I don't mean you need to be talking about it on your first date and all that sort of stuff, but just to not get carried away with those other two, because those other two are more temporary. They're more reliant on your mood at the time, and they often they get the blood pumping, and they can make you make poor short-term decisions. Whereas if they're grounded in the more commitment style love, then you can make better decisions with those types of love, and that'll set you up for better decisions long term and ultimately just better relationship. So that would be my thought.
Do you reckon, because you're sort of talking about having this commitment relationship, if you're not, I guess, I don't know, like infatuation and attraction seem to be kind of synonyms, I guess. Like how do you know you want to commit to, do that level of commitment before you even know whether you're like attracted to that person, or like how do you know? I don't know, how do you, because I think that that sort of commitment thing, particularly when I reflect on our culture as it is at the moment, it's just so not not a thing. So I don't know. I feel like you've put it like right to the top, but how do you know that about someone that you want to make that commitment sort of thing before you.
Yeah, that's right. So dating can be helpful in the sense that, you know, you actually get to know each other. It's deliberately, you're actually deliberately spending time together and getting to know each other so that you can decide whether this is the person you want to make those really big commitments to.
Mm.
So in that sense, dating can be good.
Is that you defining dating?
I guess, yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, someone's asked
You're
a question.
sussing them out to see whether you want to do the long-term
Well,
commitment thing with them.
Yeah, well, that's
Like building a friendship,
well,
or is that courting? Oh no, Kirk. I don't know who's back, but
it's a bit of a negative way of doing it, in saying it like to suss them out. But let's be honest, that's what people are often doing, isn't it? You are sussing them out. It's like, is this going to keep going? So that's tricky, and that's the dark side of dating, is the consumerism. The like, is this person measuring up to what I want? Is this person going to make me happy? And that's not a great start. So, but reality is that that will happen to an extent. So you want to hold back on that a little bit. I'd prefer the building a friendship idea. And I guess if I was getting really practical, I don't know what you guys think about this, but like, ideally it would be good to kind of have a pre-dating period where you intentionally hang out with someone and get to know them better, with the idea that you might be a bit into each other without that pressure of like being an item. That like, hey, this might be something in the future, but right now we're just deliberately trying to become better friends. And so that it's got losing that idea of like, are you measuring up to what I do? But that gets all really complicated and awkward. I don't know if you could actually make that work, but yeah, in an ideal world,
I've heard of friends
be
who've
good.
done that. It's like they're intentionally like courting, like an old school way of phrasing it. Ella, you haven't said anything in a while. Do you have any thoughts on this? I'm not discrediting Kirk because he said some good stuff. Yeah. I just noticed that did you not have much to weigh in, or thoughts? Were you stewing away over there?
Not stewing away. Two things that came into my mind. One is while you're dating, or even while you're not dating, a really important thing to do is to be talking about this stuff with the person who you're in a relationship with, or you're thinking of being in a relationship with.
So you don't want you to just be thinking, oh yeah, I want a hardcore commit, but you don't know if they're necessary. Okay, yeah. That's probably safe.
That's probably a good option. And yeah, one of the really awesome things that you can do is you can talk about, if you've got different ideas of what dating looks like, you can discuss them and work that out. Also, really important to be talking to mentors and that sort of stuff about how relationships going, because relationships can be really, really different. There's not necessarily one relationship, because people are different, and yeah, they can work out really differently. So there's not necessarily one rule, and it's kind of tricky because you've got to work out what works out for you. There's obviously things that we would say are advisable, like Kirk was talking about, the commitment stuff. But yeah, communication is really important, both with people outside your relationship and within your relationship.
So what you mentioned, mentors, are they the people that you would describe, the people outside of your relationship? How do you know if you have a mentor and what's their role?
Yeah. So a mentor is typically someone who's a bit more mature than you, or has got a bit more life experience than
wisdom.
You. Yeah, wisdom
in that area.
Yeah, they could be someone who hasn't, but most of the time we try and find mentors who are got a bit more wisdom than us, and we can approach them and talk to them about how they're going with their life. And we typically, as Christians, we try to find mentors who are in church, but this also works in the business model, that Christians aren't just people who have mentors. I'm sure you've got a mentor for wherever you're at. If
So
you,
it's sort of someone you look up to and might ask advice from.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
So I was just sort of recalling the things that both of you have said, and they seem very like, they just seem like pretty standard good relationship advice for anyone, whether they're Christians or not. Any really specific Christian related advice, like for how should Christians, I guess, separate or differently from maybe a secular dating relationship? How should that operate, and why is that different?
It is standard good, but honestly, I don't think a lot of people do dating that way. And I think a lot of people worship the idea of a romantic relationship. And I think Christians do too. Some of the wedding speeches I heard have been shocking. Modern day idolatry, just like, the bride and the groom are just worshipped, or like romantic relationships are worshipped as if Jesus himself got married, which he did not. And as if Jesus himself said the greatest thing you can do as a human being to get married, which he did not say. So I think that would be a way maybe to bring it into a more of a directly Christian perspective, is when you go into a relationship, because those hormones and emotions start pumping, it will be tempting to start to worship that person, or to worship the feelings that person gives you, and to just go, I just want more of this. This is completing me as a person. This is everything that I need. This is everything that I want, and I just need more of it. And again, it's okay to enjoy being in that relationship and for that to bring good things to your life, but it can also cause you to make terrible decisions, and to allow, you see people get used in horrible ways, to get in very dysfunctional relationships, because they worship the idea of being in a romantic relationship, and they lose all common sense on actually how to do that well and to do it functionally long term. It can create incredible amount of damage, and a lot of it. It'd be nice to have the pressure off about that, to just go, you know what, I'm not going to date anyone at school. I'll just wait till I'm done. That actually that whole gossipy sort of, do they like me? Do they not? All that's, you could just remove yourself from that and just enjoy being friends with people, and enjoy that social group that you have at school that you'll never have again, without the pressure of people, wondering whether you can date someone or whether they'll be interested in you, or whatever. I don't know. There's something appealing about just taking the pressure off there, until you're sort of out of that school bubble, which can be so gossipy. I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying it's a rule that Jesus wants you to do that, but maybe that would be the right decision for you. Have a think about it. Have a pray about it.
Mm. I've definitely heard in conversations with other Christians, just sort of talking about the importance of knowing yourself and just being confident within yourself before going into a meaningful relationship with someone else. Do you think that that's important, or is there anything that you should have in check before you're like, oh yeah, I think I'm ready to start dating? Is there anything that we should be, I don't know, does that make sense? Like, if we had a checklist of am I ready to date, what were some things that we could maybe like tick off to see if you're all G?
Self-realization is really big, and I think having, I think, Em, were you talking about knowing yourself well before entering in a relationship? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
I've heard
talking
a
about?
number of people recommend that.
Yeah. I think that I've been talking with a friend recently who's feels like she has to know herself now. And I think I think like the process of knowing yourself can take a really, really long time. And we can go through waves of feeling like we know ourselves and we don't, and we know ourselves and we don't. And we kind of go through a cycle of that. And so I'm now going to disagree with myself.
Sick.
Because yeah, even though that process can be a really long journey, it's also really important that when we love people, we know ourselves, and we know who we are, and what our habits are, and the sorts of things that we are motivated by. We were talking before about Kirk was talking about your motivations when going into dating, and it's important to know your motivations going into dating, but also just a bit about yourself so that you can then go into a relationship with the capacity to love the person who you're going to be in a relationship with. And this is like in general friendship. Like if we one of someone who I've been learning from recently is talking about when we're in conflict, we often say that conflict is in between two people. But often what happens first in conflict is that one of our values is transgressed. And there's something inside of us that we're not quite happy about. And this other person in this conflict has transgressed our values. And so one of the things that we can do then is we can work out in ourselves which one of those values has been transgressed. And by transgressed, I just mean hurt. Someone's done wrong against one of those values. And one of the awesome things that we can do in conflict or in relationships is that we can work out how that values being transgressed, and then go on to work out why that affects us, or what we can do to accommodate for this person, or what we can tell this person about ourselves, so that we can continue to be in relationship with them. And I'm not saying that if you're in a conflict with someone, you're the fault. You're the person who's at fault. I'm not saying that you are or that you're not. But we can come back to someone and say, I feel like you've hurt this value, and this is why. And maybe this is something that you could do so that this doesn't happen again, or this is something that I'm going to do so that this doesn't happen again.
That's cool. It sort of sounds like, Ella, what you're saying and what both Kirk is saying is heading into these relationships is not necessarily like the whole dating relationship thing, in terms of how do we navigate that relationship isn't super different to how we navigate like a friendship or just a relationship with someone else.
Exactly.
We still have to be, aware of where we are at, and able to communicate and navigate conflict in a healthy way. So something that has come up as well in the questions that I know that I've been asked a lot, and I think it's something that I struggle to answer because I'm like, anyway, let's see how we go. Why do Christians not have sex before marriage? So this is, I guess, the boundaries that Christians are encouraged to put on their relationships are definitely different to how how secular relationships might work. And I know that it's often of quite a bit of interest when this comes up. So why do Christians not have sex before marriage?
Primarily because of the teaching of Jesus. So Jesus taught that when two people come together and have sex, they effectively become one. And there seems to be a spiritual dynamic to that, as well as the obvious physical dynamic to it. And that he says that after that, that they should not be separated, and so that needs and that they start a new family. And so he sets that in the context of marriage. And then when you add in other biblical teaching around that, both New Testament and Old Testament, it's a pretty solid conclusion to say that the best spot and the place that God wants people to have sex is within a marriage relationship.
So comes up a lot, and I think Kirk, you're sort of touching on it now, is the whole level of commitment that you're at, and what that means. So there's that security in that.
Yeah, and so I'd come back to that. I think there's a lot of practical reasons to support the teaching of Jesus here, and there's actually a lot of evidence that you could gather to build a case for it, to being a really good idea, actually. And actually, for somebody who's not a Christian to do this would actually probably, I would suggest, would still be a really good way to go, as is most of Jesus' advice, actually. But if we come back to the idea of commitment coming ahead of those other types of love, if you think about sex being like the ultimate demonstration of that physical attraction type of love, that's the biggest expression of it that you can possibly do. So you want your commitment to be really high before you get into that level of expressing that type of love, because we want our commitment love to be the number one type that we have in a romantic relationship. And so in doing that, marriage is a huge commitment. Now, unfortunately, in our culture, marriage has become not as committed relationship as maybe it once was. So we have to grapple with that. And I understand people can be cynical about it and go, well, people just get married and then separate anyway. What's a big deal? I totally understand a bunch of cynicism about it. And obviously, Christians have applied the teaching of Jesus in a very conservative way around sexual expression and just sort of talking about sex and stuff in really ultra conservative ways, which I don't think Jesus meant. But I think the actual doing sex and actually getting naked and doing it, that's still there. Like that is much more conservative and very different to what our culture would normally do. But I haven't met anyone who's regretted following that teaching of Jesus, who did that and waited till marriage. And I've met a whole bunch of people who did. So, or who've been burnt by going too early with sex and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I would say there's actually a lot of anecdotal and evidence to suggest that Jesus is onto something. And please don't just dismiss it because you're horny. Seriously, like that's not a great reason. Just because you're in the mood, that's not a great reason to dismiss teaching that's worked very, very effectively in many cultures throughout history. But I also understand it's hard. And it's particularly hard for us because back in Jesus' day, people usually got married, pretty early, like, 15, 16. Most people were married because of arranged marriages. Now, I got married when I was 25, and I had mates telling me, like, dude, bit early, like, geez, slow down, mate. So it's like, that's changed. The cultural expectation is you should get married maybe in your mid-30s or whatever. And so, that's a challenge for Christians to be countercultural. I'm doing a talk in a couple of weeks on being different. So just tune in for that. We might get into that in a bit more detail. It's not particularly about sex or dating. We might touch on that, but yeah, we are challenged to be different. That's one area, and it's a key one, but it's an important one.
So, Kirk, you've touched on how it's not really a cultural norm. So how do you
not in our country? In other countries, this better be just standard practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so because we are in our own context, let's talk about that.
Yep.
But it's nice to know that there are other places where it's like that. Who knows? So how do you have those conversations when you start dating about sex? Because now it's, we've got this real hookup culture. Or not now, but like that's put in our face a lot in media and that sort of thing, as that's the way that we should be going. How do we have conversations around that?
Ella's point on communication was really good. I might avoid Ella answering this question just so it's not awkward for her. But like, here's what I think: just go in going, I know what I do not want to do. Like, I know where my personal boundaries are, and so I know what's definitely I'm waiting. this is in the later category for me. And then, you know, there might be some other more PG rated things that are up for negotiation, and then be really upfront about that and go, hey, this is where I'm at. These are my personal convictions. Are you okay with that? Because they're kind of a deal breaker. And if they're okay with that, then go, all right, now let's talk about your personal convictions. And then let's talk about the other stuff. You really should talk about something before you do it physically. Maybe just remember that. If you're doing it before you've ever talked about it, it's probably the wrong way around. Yeah.
And they can be really awkward conversations, but it's like it's important to put that sort of thing out there. And like Ella said, communication is really important.
They can be, but in my experience, they were really great conversations too, because once you've had them, again, the pressure's off. It's like, okay, we agree, we know where we're at on that now. And so, yeah, it's awkward to bring it up and to start the conversation. But by the end, it's been so good.
It's like, phew.
Yeah.
So this question's directly on that. So I might just do that one. How do you decide what your boundaries are? Do you develop personal convictions? Or how do you develop your personal convictions?
Can we broaden this out beyond dating? Because I'm just aware I probably spent half a day on dating. How do you develop a personal conviction around anything, right? So, you know, anything that's not specifically outlined for us in the Bible. So, yeah, there's some boundaries around sex in the Bible. Pretty clear, Jesus' teaching there. But not on dating, not on kissing or necking or, you know, groping or whatever. So, okay, there's convictions there. But what about in the workplace? Like, what are your convictions on, you know, how to interact with your fellow employees, or how to study? You know, your convictions on you know, you're a student and what sort of level of effort you should put in your study, or how busy you should be, or how not busy you should be in your life when restrictions come back off. You know, how do you actually develop those things that the Bible doesn't directly address? Ella, I know you've done some of this sort of thinking, so I feel safe chucking it to you.
Cool. Well, there's 4 things that can help us develop convictions on things. We've got the Bible, we've got our experience of church, we've got our own experiences that we've had in our life, and we've got reason and rational thinking. And that can involve also what science or culture might tell us as well. If we think it's saying something reasonable and it matches up with what something in the Bible says, when we interpret the Bible, or it matches up with what church tradition says, then often we can take it as one of the points that we might use to develop a conviction. And your best personal convictions are likely to involve those 4 things often. Sometimes we can't get those 4 things. Someone talked about how dating isn't really talked about in the Bible that much, and so it's hard to develop a personal conviction about it from the Bible. But also, Jesus has some awesome teaching about relationships and how we love people in general, and so we can take information from there when we develop our personal convictions. So those are 4 great things. You could also include talking to Christian friends about things, and also asking the Holy Spirit about stuff. This isn't typically a process that we go through in our everyday life of going, how should I treat my friend in the workplace? Let's look at these 4 things, even though that can be a great process. And if you've got something you're really grappling with, I think consulting those 4 things can be really an awesome way to go about that. Also, you could I think naturally we get information from those 4 things. When we're reading the Bible, we're developing personal convictions on things. When we're going to church and listening to sermons, that's our experience of church tradition. I think often when we're in touch with the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit's working inside us, Holy Spirit can be guiding us to have personal convictions and act because of them. How am I going, Em? Is that answering the question?
I think so. I'm doing the thing where I'm like consciously looking at the time and then trying to like listen. Anyway, I feel like, yeah, I feel like that's good. I think, like Kirk said, and I'm just very aware that we have talked a lot about dating. Whilst it's not not a topic that's bad to talk about, I think it can be really helpful. Yeah, we've just got a bunch of questions that have come in this last little bit, and I'm aware that we don't have a huge amount of time left, but it'd be nice to sort of try to tackle a couple of these before we wrap up. I just want to point back to, so we have podcasts, our talks each week are recorded. We did a sermon series called Not in Polite Company, and these topics were talked about. So Kirk, particularly, I think, talked a lot about how to navigate dating, like a romantic relationship, sex, boundaries. So yeah, you can go back into, I think, in Spotify or any other like podcast app thing, check out St. John's Diamond Creek, and that sermon series will be there. Yeah, so Kirk, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, you can hear.
Yeah, I wonder if that might have dated a bit, that series, in the sense that
I listened to it last year. Oh no, maybe 2 years ago.
What a pun.
Oh yeah. How did I go?
Well, yeah, no, it was good. I was like, yeah, because I was mentoring some like high school age kids, and these questions were coming up, and I was like, okay, it'd be nice to just get a refresher on that before I answer some questions. Yeah, no, it was
Well,
really
yeah.
good.
We will circle back round to those topics, again soon. Won't be too long till we come back to them.
And yeah, and there's definitely more that we could talk about on that. I'm just aware that there's a range of other questions here, and we don't have a huge amount of time left. So
there is one question, Em, just reading off the screen.
Yeah, go for it.
That I'm going to defer to 2 weeks, because pretty much my entire talk is about, well, the whole passage is about this. So the question is, how can we both love and care for those who go against God but keep our distance and not associate with them as we're told to in the Bible?
Yeah, good question.
So the 2 Corinthians passage coming up, not next Sunday, but the Sunday after, is every verse is about that.
Beautiful.
And so I've been thinking a lot about it, I've been grappling a lot with it. And so instead of like giving you, hodgepodge thoughts right now, I'm going to say tune in for that one. I'm going to sizzle up for 2 weeks' time.
Nice little plug there.
Yeah, but if you want to read ahead of it, it's basically 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and a bit into chapter 7. So you could read that and see what's going on there. And it can be a bit confronting. Actually, when I first read it, I was like, oh, I'm preaching on that. Okay. But yeah, see, and then come back and see the thoughts that I share on that one.
Okay, so I think this might be our last question. Yeah, there's been a couple of other questions that have come up, but yeah, just for the sake of time, knowing where we're at, yeah, this will be the last one. So this one relates directly to the talk. Yeah, so in the talk, Julie mentioned that she had someone that she felt prompted to share Jesus with, and she didn't do that. And then later on, she learned that person had died, and she really lamented that. This question says, how can we witness to someone whose loved one has died as a non-believer? What do we answer if they ask if their loved one is in hell? Yeah, just a nice, easy one there to bring it together.
Have you ever been asked this, Ella?
I've done training for if I have been asked it. And one of the things that really helped me was that we never really know. We, like the Bible talks about, those who trust in Him will be with Him in heaven. But when around that topic, that is not a quote of a Bible verse. Go check it out for yourself. Go have your own biblical understanding about that. But we can't really be sure. We don't know where people are at with Jesus. All we can really be sure about is ourselves.
Is that a
and
cop-out
they're
answer?
at with God. It could be, but also if we don't know for sure where people are at with Jesus and where Jesus is at with them, then we don't, like, why would we try and give them the wrong answer, or why would we?
Yeah, it's not a cop-out answer, it's a responsible answer.
Definitely.
Because you don't know. And so, yeah, I think saying, I actually have been asked directly by a friend whose brother had died. And so I said, I have no idea. And then, yeah, the assurance of salvation is there's an assurance of salvation, there's not an assurance of condemnation. So in the sense that we can be sure that if we believe that Jesus is Lord in our hearts and we speak it with our mouth, that we will be saved. And so if you do that genuinely, then, and only you can know if you're doing it genuinely in your heart, then you can have confidence that if you die, you will be with Jesus, and your relationship your loving relationship with him will continue perfectly after you've died. So that's assurance that we can give to people who are alive. We don't know exactly how it works for people who have died. We don't know what's going on in other people's hearts. Someone might say that Jesus is Lord. That doesn't mean that deep down that they believe it.
Yeah.
And then even then, we've got to factor in God's grace. He's forgiving. He's merciful. He's patient. He's kind. He's slow to anger. All these things, and all this is, hell is not clear cut. No, it's nowhere near as clear cut as saving sex to a marriage. I'll tell you that. And so, we want to be very, very slow to say that anyone is in hell. I think the reality of sin being dealt with and sin being punished is there, and we have to acknowledge that that God will and does respond to evil. But yeah, but like picking on individuals and going, well, they're going to hell and they're going to hell and they're going to hell. Find one verse in the Bible where it's our job as humans to make that decision and to go around telling people, and point me to it, because I can't find it. And Julie's talk today, our job is to be ambassadors of good news, so that people can know the good news and live life now knowing that they have that good news for after. That's the most generous thing you can give someone, is the good news now. So I back you, Ella. I think the training that you got there was good.
Yeah. Definitely not an easy conversation to have, and I'm a little jealous that you've had training on how to answer such a tough question. So I think we'll leave it there for tonight, guys. Massive thanks for being willing to just give up your time, answer some questions on a public forum such as YouTube, rather than just, I guess, from the safety of our church. So thanks for that. I think your answers have been really genuine and really insightful. So just with that question that came up towards the end, when was that talk, Kirk? 2 weeks that you were talking about?
June 14, it'll be on YouTube.
Awesome. So if you felt like you wanted some more information about that, perhaps that's something you can look into now, then. But thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed our second go at doing Q&A online. Thanks for coming along. And thanks Ella and Kirk for that. Can be really tricky to come up with some good answers on the spot.
Yeah, thanks, Em. And look, we don't get to every question, and we do pike on a couple that seem too big, and like we're going to have to talk about it for 20 minutes because it's too hard.
Oh yeah.
So apologize if we don't get it, but try again next time, and we might be able to have a go at it.
Definitely.
Thanks to everyone for participating. It's really cool.
Yeah, thanks so much for your participation, guys. It makes us still feel part of an active community here, although we're separated. So hopefully see you soon.
Yep.
Cool.
We might do one. Yeah, I'm going on leave on the 15th. So why don't we do one again on the 14th? Should we lock that in? Yeah, let's do it.
I'm not a decision maker, so
I-
okay.
yeah, I
Yes,
agreed-
that will
I agreed with-
definitely happen.
I agreed with myself. I think we'll probably do it on the 14th. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, cool. Nah, that sounds great. Cool. All right. So bye.
Bye. See you, everybody.
See ya.
Stay groovy.